Hey everyone, is Tim Cook in hot water with El Duce? You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. It was a great weekend. I was up in Boston. Actually, my oldest son graduated law school, and it was quite well, as a parent, it was a proud moment for me. So all good there. But we're back here on the gang, and we've got some great gang members. Let me get right to them. First of all, joining us from some airport somewhere in the world, he is a Futurum analyst, visible impact principal analyst, loyal Techstrong Gang member, moving up the ranks here, the one and only Guy Currier. Hey, Guy, how are you?
Hi, good to be here. Yep, I'm good. I'm in the Orlando airport, the wonderful Orlando airport, on the way back because I spent the weekend with my uncle who lives in the area. And also, I do want to say my daughter is starting college next year, but her plans to go to law school. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. He did the hard work. I just wrote the checks. But nevertheless, it's a proud moment. All right, moving over from Guy, one of our newest members of the gang, but she's been on 3 or 4 already. She's a regular. Excuse me. Cybersecurity expert extraordinaire, Teri Robinson. Hey, Teri, good to see you.
It's so good to see you, and I want to extend my congratulations too for son's graduation. My daughter graduates today, Monday afternoon, from law school as well. So,
really good for
next
you.
stop, the bar, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think. Well, so he's taking the Mass bar up in Boston, and it's the end of July. They're all around.
That's when she's taken the New York bar. So.
Yeah, very cool indeed. All right. Moving over to Silicon Valley, where he looks downright rosy in the cheeks today. Even I don't know. I don't know if it's makeup or someone's been pinching him, but he's our Silicon Valley editor, John Swartz. Hey, John, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm back at the friendly confines of Belmont. Congratulations to all our college graduates and people going into college. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, it's great to have you on. And then finally, he might be graduating from going to minor league games to the big league. Well, Mike, you had the Subway Series this weekend, but we're here not to talk baseball. But Juan Soto got booed really bad in it, and I got to tell you the truth, I felt good. Our chief content officer, Mike Vizard.
All right, we got 2 out of college, 1 in and 1 to go. So I'll be working for a while.
Yeah, that's what that means. Anyway, let's move into it. I kicked it off. It seems our friends at Apple have crossed the MAGA line. They're not going to build more iPhones in China, but they want to build them in India instead. And while he was in the UAE giving them 500,000 GPUs from NVIDIA to build the biggest AI center there, he took the time out to chastise Apple and Tim Cook about building iPhones in India. Mike, what do you think?
Well, it seems like, to your point, we talked about the whole meddling in the GPU business last week, and now we're extending that out to smartphones. And he apparently told the CEO of Apple that manufacturing in India was undermining the trade position for the United States government. So all these things now are somehow or other bargaining chips. But Guy, this is unprecedented in my mind, but what's your take?
Well, I think what's unprecedented is the degree to which just lip flapping is being taken seriously because of the position of the person flapping the lips. I mean, last week, Trump was out in the Middle East you've heard the phrase that being treated like royalty, but in this case, take it literally being treated as if he were a prince. Or a king or what have you. I completely believe that he had the conversation with Tim Cook. I do not necessarily believe I definitely don't believe literally what he said about that conversation. Other than the detail of saying, "Hey, you have to manufacture everything here." I think he probably did say that. And Apple, I mean, pity the poor tech billionaire CEO, right? Who has founded, in Tim Cook's case, a whole lot of that billionaireship and the deserved success of Apple on manufacturing and assembly of iPhones, but also a lot of other devices in China, and is trying to find some way to find stability in supply chain in the midst of complete instability in trade policy and to actually, tariffs is the usual word, but all kinds of uncertainty over how much costs of manufacturing assembly overseas are going to be, right? So they move to a different, what would anybody do in that position, billionaire or not? They're going to move to another source. And they've increased the investment in India from, I mean, John, you wrote this story. I think they're moving towards something like 25% of iPhones being manufactured in India.
Yeah,
It's probably
26,
15%.
yeah, 25%.
Yeah, it was
Yep.
at 15% a few years ago. But let's call this for what it is, which is another thing for a politician to say and take credit for that doesn't necessarily have any actual foundation behind it. Our president happens to do that about 99% of the time instead of 50% of the time or 20% of the time, depending on how cynical you feel. I would not take this to the bank in any way, except for one thing. We still don't really know. We don't know what Tim Cook said. We don't know what Apple's going to do. All we have are the words of somebody who says all kinds of things all the time. And John, I really appreciated the way your story was liberal with the quotes of our president, instead of trying to take them at face value, just present them to everybody.
Yeah, no, it's like a mob boss, trying to strong arm somebody and shake them down. I mean, this is to think of. I think of the absurdity, and I know Alan's going to weigh in on this. We've got maybe arguably the greatest CEO in terms of operations and running a company who's trying to do the best thing for his shareholders and his
customers,
employees,
incidentally,
right?
and
He's
customers
trying to
too.
diversify the supply and customers, especially customers. He's trying to diversify the product line so he doesn't jack up the price of the products. He's keeping his options open, and in fact, from what I understand, within Apple, they have plans in place to either move harder to India or fall back into China. What is must be so galling to Cook is this idea that Trump is going to probably change his mind yet again. I mean, he dropped the tariffs against
He
China
doesn't
from
change his mind,
125%.
John. He doesn't change his mind. These people take a stick and hit him on the head and say, "Stupid, back down," and he
Okay,
folds up like a
okay,
cheap
I'll
suit.
take you
But
on
the
that.
outcome-
But here's my
He doesn't
fear.
change his mind.
But here, for Apple, the fear is they have this exemption in place, right? He's going to lift that probably. I mean, he's going to change his mind yet again. It's just a guy who doesn't understand basic math, telling somebody who's a genius at operations, "I'm just going to play games with you," despite your commitment to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on the U.S. over 4 years in manufacturing, what have you. I mean, the whole thing is so galling, and it must be chilling to any other tech company or any company that has to deal with this BS. And
Well,
it's
I
going to be
do
going
think
on
it's a
for months.
shakedown. I think your essential point is it's a shakedown, and the important thing is that the shakedowns never stop. They never stop. So if you give
No,
in
here's
once,
the
it doesn't mean
important
they'll
thing. It's
stop.
not just a shakedown. It's not. It's a shakedown. Look, should Tim turn around and buy him a nice plane and then everything will be okay? Right? Is that what it takes? And you know what? With all due respect, Kamala Harris brought this up in the debate with him, the one debate, because he was afraid to do more because she ran around him, that foreign leaders know his game. They know flatter him or flat out bribe him, and he lays down like a puppy dog to scratch my belly. Right? That's what you're dealing with here. But let me sit down. Let me unpack this for you. Besides buying him a plane or something that'll mollify this guy and let you do anything you want, let's look at what it is. This SOB is in the Middle East cavorting with people who have financially supported terrorists who have blown up stuff and killed people in the US, let alone in Israel and everywhere else. Right? It's a known fact that the Qataris support Hamas. It's a known fact where bin Laden's financial support came from. Right? But all's okay. And he's going to use Apple as a whipping boy, a fine corporation that's already pledged $500 billion. He's going to use them as a whipping boy while he allows UAE to, as I mentioned, get 500,000 NVIDIA GPUs to build an AI campus there, perhaps the biggest in the world. While him and his sons are making $400 million deals to build golf courses and build buildings over there. Right? Didn't think it was important enough to go up to Turkey and deal with anything around this Ukraine-Russian war, because that's really just lip service until Vlad pulls his string and tells him, get over here. Right? This whole thing is ridiculous. But let me give you another thing. Apple's duty is not to the United States of America. Though they're a U.S. company or a U.S.-based company, they have customers and interests around the world. Tim Cook has one boss, and it ain't Donald Trump. It's the board of directors of Apple and their shareholders. And he has a fiduciary duty to do what's best for Apple and their shareholders, not even their customers. Their shareholders. And that may or may not be in sync with what's best for U.S. policy. But this is what happens when you have global corporations. And it's high time we remember corporations have a duty to their shareholders. If Tim Cook starts doing what's right for the U.S. at the cost of his shareholders, he's going to get fired and sued. And rightfully so.
Imagine if Trump had his way. So, say Apple, in pure panic, was forced into doing this. It's absurd. It would take years, first of all, to ramp up production. So it would cost
it's not even realistic. But here's the visual. You got this 78-year-old, svelte 280-pound person with Jensen Huang, Elon Musk, and all these other sycophants glued onto his hip or his backside or whatever. And he's telling him, yeah, give him 500,000 GPUs. Give them some Starlink. I want my name on that building. Give me this plane. Dude, did you ever watch the Star Trek episode where they land on the planet that somehow there was a book like Al Capone's Chicago was left there, and 500 years later, the whole civilization is built around the gangs of Chicago? This is what we live in. This is what we live in. It's ludicrous. It's psychotic. Stop the nonsense.
Hey, I have an idea. Maybe Apple should build a special Trump iPhone like they did for you too. Maybe they appeal to his ego and narcissism, and they build a Trump.
No, I'll give you a better example. Do you remember Godfather Part 2? Michael Corleone and Hyman Roth go to visit the president of Cuba, Duarte, right? I think, no, that was a different banana republic. Whoever was the president before Fidel took, Batista. And Batista, they're sitting around this table with all these captains of industry, much like Trump is. And he passes around a solid gold telephone as a gift to Batista from ITT. And everyone look around and everyone looks at the phone and they pass it around. And this is the same. It's like out of a friggin' movie, dude. Come on. We're living in a nightmare. We live in a nightmare of what the U.S. should and could be. That's the bottom line.
You know what was really also telling, Alan, is when you mentioned the sycophants, we had the president of Alphabet, was IBM CEO, Sam Altman was there, Qualcomm CEO.
What?
I mean,
Why?
it was a
You
little
don't think it's the same thing when Putin comes somewhere and he brings Gazprom and that prom and the other prom and they all go to a prom? It's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
I'm not really sure though. You're characterizing the nightmare correctly. I think there's a lot nightmarish about this, but in the context of this show, this podcast, the nightmare is that there are businesses and individuals around the world who rely on Apple and the iPhone in particular to conduct business or to live their lives. And they have no idea. It's not that they think the price is going to go up or down or whatever. That whole platform for them has become less reliable in terms of cost, use, what have you. And that may be one piece of it. When you think about the fact that this flapping of the lips can happen anywhere with any company or country randomly and continue to create that uncertainty. We don't even have to talk about business uncertainty. We can just talk about the uncertainty of individuals around the world being able to do the things that they want to do. That, I think, with technology in the context of this show. So the rest of the nightmare you're talking about, having a kleptocratic or godfather as a president or whatever it is, I agree with you. That's a nightmare. That's a political nightmare. It's a global economic and global political nightmare. But I always try to bring it back to the fact that this is Techstrong. And I would like people to understand, like, what do I do now? Great. Flap the slips. What do I do? And I think it's just recognize that the problem you're facing, you know what? To begin with, recognize what the problem is within this context of technology. Planning is going to be more difficult.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't think this is good for anybody but Trump himself, and that's only a temporary flash, I guess. He's roiling the markets worldwide. That's what he's gonna do. That uncertainty isn't good for the economy. It's not good for the tech companies. It's not good for the country, and it's certainly not good for who you're talking about, Guy, the people who have to use this stuff. So, I just wonder at what point this breaks. When does this break? When does it break? When is it enough, or when does something happen? There's like a critical mass and it falls apart. I mean, am I being hopeful to think that that might happen at some point? And there's a shakeup in our government or somebody. I don't even know how you leash him or pull him in from this kind of stuff. But uh, there's just going to be such long term impact on everything. I don't mean to sound.
So my next question is there going to be a shakedown of Samsung to follow this? Because that seems to be the next thing. I
Well,
mean,
he
they have
doesn't
owned-
consider Samsung an American company, right? The concept of an American company versus those guys.
we made TMSC commit to building plants
Well,
here in the
because
U.S.
we
I
hold a
suspect-
gun to their head that we won't help them when the red China people invade, right?
Well,
I gotta
think
bring
we'll hold
this
the same
back to
gun
the-
that Korea's have, right?
I got to bring it back to the flapping of the lips idea. The purpose of the statements is publicity, Trump's own brand image, power. It's not an actual move of any kind other than that. So no, it's not Samsung because, I don't think it's Samsung either because Samsung is not this burnished brand, this amazing brand like Apple is. So name a bunch of amazing brands and yes, but Samsung however great it's.
Samsung is not an American company. But there's one other aspect that we haven't touched on. If Donald Trump was in the White House press room or here domestically, and this is a domestic thing, it would still get a lot of play. But, he's here doing his thing. But no, he was actually at a press conference with the emir of UAE, and he brought this whole thing up. The emir's looking at him like, have you seen the video of this, the visuals? They're looking at him like, where, because he also at the same press conference brought up what a great job he's done with the price of groceries. And he said to the Emir, I don't know if you know what groceries is. It's an old word or something like that. This buffoon, right, is out here in the world not realizing the joke's on him. They're not laughing with him. They're laughing at him. But they know all they got to do is throw a couple dollars his way. And like I said, he rolls over. And you know, one thing that the oil-rich Arab states are really good at, it's why they're still in power, these emirs and sheiks and all of them. They've always bought their way in. They've always bought their way in. Have we forgotten what happened to the reporter, Ashan Khashoggi, right? Yeah, you don't hear about that anymore. He's bought his way in. They've done this. This is what the emirs and the sheiks and the Saudis do. When they find someone who's buyable, they buy them. And that's what, and be proud, America. Your president's been bought. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about CISA.
Hey folks, we're back, and well, the fun never ends when it comes to anything related to Washington, and there's been another turn in the CISA drama. It's a bit of a soap opera these days, but apparently there was a contract that got canceled that was being disputed anyway, but now we're just basically saying, well, it's all mute because anybody who was involved in actually needing that service from a company called Lidos, well, they're not working there anymore. So, Teri, what is going on in CISA from your perspective? And is this going to be just, continuing drama?
Sure. Well, more shenanigans basically from this administration when it comes to CISA. I mean, I think really all of this stems back right to when Chris Krebs said that the 2020 election was secure, and that sort of undercut, Trump's narrative that he had really won the election and whatever, and Joe Biden had lost. So I think, going back to that, we know that he's going after Krebs already for, whatever it is. I don't think there's any case there, but he's publicly trying to skewer him. So I think this is a bit more of the same. You're right. This $2.4 billion contract was under dispute already in the courts, but that's because Nightwing, who was competitive for this bid, and Lidos were sort of duking it in. But the Department of Homeland Security has made it clear, or they've said that this has nothing to do with that. It's they're pulling the contract simply because the nature of CISA has changed, the personnel, the mission, and whatever. And it's a shame. I mean, this contract is for agile cybersecurity technical solutions, right? So that supports analytics, testing, integration of security tools. At this point, it's gone away. Honestly, it feels to me, again, like it's just this administration's grudge against CISA, and also kind of fits into what Chris Murphy. You guys saw that, how he skewered Kristi Noem last week, and said that basically DHS has turned into sort of the border security. I mean, that's where all their money is going. That's where all their effort is going. I think they don't care about taking money away from cybersecurity efforts at a time when we probably under heightened threat.
So look, you put a puppy killer in charge of these things, right? And this is what you're dealing with. Again, the ludicrous nature of our lives these days in the U.S., right? You have a woman who's vastly, vastly underqualified here, other than that she sucks up to Donald Trump and she shot a puppy when she didn't like it. You put her in charge of the DHS, and you make their primary mission to be border control, as you mentioned, Terry. But it's not just the DHS's primary mission. We're taking away troops in Europe and all over the world because the primary mission of our armed forces are also to be border control. We have this is like out of the I feel like an iron curtain has descended upon the continent, right? That's what this is where we are now. CISA, which has probably done more to help cybersecurity than any government agency or initiative that I've seen in my 30 years of doing this, has been bludgeoned. I mean, but here's the thing, you got to give these people credit. They're so transparent. They don't even hide it. She got up at RSA and said she was doing this and proud of it. People are sitting in the audience. I was there. They're sitting there shocked that this woman has the audacity to come to RSA conference where the security world gathers to tell us that they're de-arming CISA. So what do you expect? When someone has said this before, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If it sounds like a fascist and acts like a fascist, they're fascist. That's what you're dealing with. So am I surprised by this? No. I do hope that private industry can fill the vacuum. Private things like RSA Community, and some other Linux foundations, and some of these non-governmental entities, because there is a vacuum to be filled here, because I fear we are going to have some sort of critical infrastructure or some sort of catastrophic cyber warfare incidents, because we are taking down, we're laying down our arms. We are laying down our arms and saying, as long as you're not brown and coming over the southern border, we don't care what you do.
The part of this that's crazy, though, the part of this that's exceptionally crazy is that there's a sort of this assumption coming from them that says, those attacks from Russia or China that involve any kind of social engineering and propaganda are not attacks, right? Those are not within the purview of CISA to go defend. And that part is crazy because you're allowing foreign entities to pollute conversations and attack election systems with nobody there to defend.
Yeah, but
them.
It's almost like
we're wide open now. We're wide
everything's
open.
backward. Everything's backward. We look the other way, yet we accuse CISA of being Ministry of Truth, and we denigrate Chris Krebs, who was great at his job, while we dismantle this organization. Sorry, Guy, for interrupting.
No. It struck me, which I think Alan alluded to, this really straightforward nature of this. They didn't go quite there and say, we don't need this $2 billion contract because the agency that would use it is basically destroyed and stood down. But they said the priorities have changed at CISA, which is right. That's actually right. They didn't even say, we're going to save a bunch of money. And one thing that was really interesting, Teri, you mentioned the Chris Murphy and just the general engagement that Kristi Noem had with Congress last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, because he pointed out to her that they've spent all their money for the year, more or less, already.
They're going to be spending more than they have, and they're about to do that. So
they'll spend more, and then they'll talk about what a terrible deficit the previous administration left them in.
Yeah, but that's a whole other thing that's going on here. They're not proposing budgets for next year. They're spending in, what was it, about a $500 million ad campaign that they put up at Homeland Security. I don't know how much of their budget that is. Probably not a whole lot, honestly. And canceling a multi-year contract might sound really great with all these billions of dollars and stuff, but that's really not going to make them whole. It's all theater. I'm going to start talking like Alan now. It's all theater.
The guy they put in charge of FEMA, which I believe also is Homeland Security, he came out the other day and said, look, he's never done this before. He really doesn't have a hurricane or emergency response plans put in place. They've lost a lot of people. Give him some time. He's working on it. It's hurricane season here in 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, and
What catastrophe? What could go wrong?
um,
I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead,
was going to say,
Teri.
as a native of Louisiana, that actually makes me shudder. But I think, to your point, though, Mike, too. I mean, if you admit that these things are going on, that Russia's doing this or China's doing that, or North Korean hackers or whatever, then you are admitting that they are our enemies and that they probably had something to do with election interference previously and all that. This administration can't admit to any of that. So I think CISA is gonna whatever is left of CISA is gonna always be in the crosshairs. And I think we're not gonna really admit publicly to these problems until we have some big incident. And to your point, Alan, yes, it's like an iron curtain dropping down, but what can penetrate that iron curtain? It's cyber attacks.
Yes. Yeah. Crazy. All right, let's take a break. Can we talk about something not related to this administration? My blood pressure is high. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Let's come back and talk about Salesforce or something.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking about an acquisition that Salesforce made where they bought a company that specializes in AI agents. It kind of took me by surprise because I could have sworn that I had just spent the last 2 years listening to Salesforce about how great they are in AI agents. And then they turned around and bought somebody who, well, looks like they're pretty good in AI agents. But John, am I being cynical?
No, you're not being cynical. You're being brutally honest, Mike. This seems to be a pattern, right? We're seeing all these AI related acquisitions to kind of fill gaps or add spackle to what companies have told us they can already do. So it kind of raises a little bit of suspicion. So Salesforce basically says they've agreed to acquire Convergence. .ai, which is behind these advanced systems that perform complex human-like tasks in digital environments, such as AI agent design, autonomous task execution, adaptive systems. And in a sense, basically, the acquisition is meant to advance what Agentforce, the foundation of Salesforce's AI strategy, is supposed to be doing or has been doing, maybe struggling to do. It's interesting. I think, Mike, a couple of weeks ago, you wrote a story. Salesforce has been just clobbering us over the head with announcements, but they made this. They have this continuing EGI initiative that they've been pushing, and they made a couple of announcements, including CRM Arena, and to me, it's interesting. I think we're going to see more of this. I mean, literally every other day, we're seeing a minor acquisition by a large company that claimed to have a comprehensive AI agent strategy. That's my takeaway. So I too share your cynicism.
Right. It does feel like a roll up is already starting to happen in all these AI startups where the bigger companies are just buying them. I guess maybe they figure they're less expensive now than later, or maybe the pricing is right. But I don't know. Alan, do you think the incumbents have an advantage when it comes to agentic AI because they have all the data? Or, is this going to be the startups are eventually going to take over because they're just faster and better innovators?
So, last Thursday, I did one of my my weekly Shimmy Says on LinkedIn. There might be a short of it on YouTube. I'm going to get these all moved over to Techstrong TV. I addressed this, right? I addressed this issue, spoke about this one a little bit. Mike, the startups never really take over. If you're lucky, with every wave, one or two of the startups make their way into the old boys club, but it's still an old boys club, right? And this is the way of it, right? These startups innovate. The little fish, they innovate. The medium fish, they buy that innovation and they make products out of it and product market fit. And then the big fish eat the medium fish and they put those products into their platform. That's what this is, right? And as a Yankee fan, Mike, I'm surprised that you don't see why Salesforce would buy Conversion. You could never have enough pitching or left-handed hitters in Yankee Stadium. And if you're Salesforce, right? If you're Salesforce, you can never have enough AI, agentic AI expertise. But here's the
And
thing.
why? Yeah.
Go ahead, Guy.
Go ahead.
No,
No,
you
this one,
go, and
why
then
do
I'll
you
come
need
back.
that stable? Why do you need that stable? Because, the number of baseball scenarios is infinite. And so you're just trying to cover as many of them as you can with different, even, two left-handed slider pitchers can have different approaches that you might want to use.
And one may
so if
get
you could have
hurt.
an infinite bullpen, you would. I just want to help us step back a little bit on this. I spent the last 2 weeks at 2 successive conferences that talked about agentic AI. And do you remember on this show I've said before, there's no such thing as an AI application. I've posted full rants about this before. There's applications and they use AI. So agentic AI is an agent that uses AI and one or more AI services, but it's an agent. No CIO or CTO ever went around like 5 years ago saying, hey, you know what we need? We need more agents. The question was for what? For what? I need an ops agent. I need, maybe a workflow agent. Like there are lots of agents all up and down the stack. So to say agentic AI, it's just a really non-descriptive category. Why did Salesforce buy an agentic AI specialist? This is this human thing, right? They act as humans, right? That gives me the willies, but let's just go with it. Well, maybe ultimately the idea is to replace entire Salesforces with Salesforce. I don't know.
Well, how about they did it because they can?
Yeah. So there's just, yeah.
I'm going to disagree in the sense that, I'll take the opposite tack. What I don't need is 50 applications to do something. And every day I encounter something where I'm like, Jesus, I got to log into this other thing over here just to pull that out. So we connect something to this. And I think, in the future, I think most people are just going to want to have an AI agent that pulls what they need, regardless of what app it's in. And all these apps just become headless services.
You're never going to have it one AI agent that does all. You're talking about a master agent.
I will have a master butler that will talk to all these other
the other agents. And that is something Salesforce and ServiceNow and Automation Anywhere are all, that's the holy grail, right? This orchestrator. But let me take another tack on this. And again, I spoke about it on my Shimmy Says. We are definitely in some sort of M&A wonderland, right? We're seeing deals coming down the pike, and every one of these deals have the word AI or agentic AI, general AI, generative AI. They all have AI involved, and that's what's making it go. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is it the sign of a healthy AI ecosystem in the natural order, or is it the sign of a sick? There's some sickness here, or there's some bubble or what have you, right? Some malaise. And you like that word, right, Mike?
I do. I'm reminded of Joe Kennedy getting out of the market because the shoe boy told him to buy stocks.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly it.
What was a malaise? Jimmy Carter, though?
Yes.
That was Jimmy Carter.
That was a Jimmy Carter word. It was. God bless Jimmy Carter. But here's the deal. The money being paid for these AI companies, whether they're really just an open source database company or something else, right, is healthy. You're paying $1 million for a Postgres, serverless Postgres. $1 billion, excuse me. I don't know what the sale price was on Convergence.
They didn't disclose
right. Well,
it.
we'll find out. They're
Alan,
public.
Can I mention one thing
Sure.
that it's kind of a pat on the back for the Futurum group? Salesforce was mentioning, again, the digital labor force and the digital labor market. And they cited the Futurum group report that came out that estimated it to be $6 trillion by 2030. Seems pretty high. But anyway, they're using that as one of their
yeah. But I think we're seeing that pull back because I think what's happening there is people are realizing, and you know what, speaking of Futurum, actually Daniel Newman wrote this on LinkedIn the other day too, and I commented on it, that at least between now and let's say 2028, 2029, what AI is going to be much more of a co-pilot than a pilot. It's not going to necessarily take away people's jobs. It's going to augment people and make them more effective. That's not to say that at some point in the future it is going to take people's jobs. It will, but not in the near term, right? Not in the near term. It's not, for all those people running around saying it's going to take everybody's jobs away, that's not happening right now. But again, is it a bit of a gold rush and people are trying to get in before we find out that it's the man behind the black curtain pulling the levers that is making all this Wizard of Oz stuff, right? And then, if you're not one of the first companies that got in on this gold rush, you get some pretty meager rations, right? You're going to start seeing fire sales and all of this stuff. We've seen this cycle before. It's boom bust. And right now, we're certainly in the boom. The valuations are really high. If you've got you don't even need a good business, but if you could slap an AI angle on it, one of these.
So what motivates this, Alan or Tim? What motivates this? I feel like this feels, well, okay, right. But my sense, which is based on virtually nothing, is Benioff is palling around with his, VC angel, whatever like that, the whole finance area. And he wants to be able to go and say, hey, I bought this company. They're really cool. They do all this stuff because it helps keep the money flowing. It's not marketing to, the market, customers, buyers, partners. It's marketing to the financial community, Silicon Valley financial community. But I don't know.
You got to look at this as a business guy. Every company Benioff takes off the board is one less company on the board, one less potential company that one of his competitors are going to buy, or that maybe will strike lightning in a bottle and become a real competitor to him, right? He's taking pieces off the board. When you're the king or the queen on the chessboard, right, and you have that advantage, you don't mind trading rooks and knights and bishops because you've got the power, right? As that board thins out, you have a strategic advantage. And he does, because he was early in it. He's got lots of resources. He's taking chips off the board.
I'm going to be deeply disappointed when that $6 trillion in GDP or whatever it is only turns out to be a measly 2 or 3 million. I mean, come on.
2 or 3 million or trillion?
Hey, the one thing about Mark Benioff, God bless him. I've known this guy forever. If there's ever somebody who is going to hammer home something in terms of marketing, in terms of mind share, in terms of trying to oversell an idea, it's going to be him. So that's why we're just going to see an acceleration of a lot of AI related news. They also announced it on Thursday last week. Salesforce announced new pricing system around AI products. So more to come.
Yep. I think, we're going to see a deal a day here for a little bit. And then it'll be interesting to see, though, if the multiples stay high, right? What the sell prices are. Anyway, Guy, I hear them calling your gate.
Maybe we should just have a segment that's deal of the day segment.
I think we have the last 3 shows. Yeah.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah,
I'll give you
let's make a
$50 if you have a paperclip in your.
Tell you what, next time I have the chance to, Alan, I'll actually do a walking appearance and I'll get on the plane and sit down.
That
in
would
my
be
seat.
very cool. Yeah, sort of. Well, shades of O.J. Simpson run through the airport.
Can I get an AI image of Monty Hall for this new segment?
We could probably come up with that.
That's a good idea.
And Jay, what do we have
That's a
for
really
our
good
guests? Right? I don't know how many people got that one. I know Mike and John did. All right. Let's call a wrap on this version of Techstrong Gang. I'm afraid they revoked my TSA pre or something. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully, with even more great commentary on what's going on in our world, mostly about what's going on in tech in our world. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. Have a great day, everyone.